I'm glad y'all are here. My name is Andy Lewis. This is what we're going to be talking about today. We got some great visuals. It's a lot of fun. So I'm going to start kind of assuming that nobody knows anything about, kind of the component ecosystem. We'll talk about a specific case where something got backdoored and downloaded and released. All right, that'll be UA-Parser JS. We'll talk about how it happened, what happened. We'll show a little bit more about what's going on with software supply chain security, and then we'll talk about what to do about it, and then wrap up with Q&A and all that. So if that's not what you expected to see, go ahead and leave. Not going to hurt my feelings. It's okay. All right? While we're doing that, let me give you a disclaimer. I call them the weasel words. This isn't LASCON speaking. This isn't my company speaking. This is me talking. So use at your own risk, all right? Who am I? So I am a born-again, former United States Marine. So if you feel like somebody dropped a revival tent into a boot camp graduation, you are in the right place. That's me talking. I did found a couple of OS chapters, and I did found a conference, but I am not as smart as Josh Sokol. Who doesn't know who Josh is? Okay, so Josh is the guy who founded this thing in about 2010 or 2011, I think. And when I was active in OWASP, we would go back and forth a lot. Hey, what are you guys doing? Hey, what are you guys doing? Can you guys agree that this is a great frickin' conference? Yeah. So I'm not as smart as Josh, but I did something like that. I also played in the cloud, and just so you guys, if you haven't figured it out, I'm going to test you. So I'm going to ask you questions like, hey, who doesn't know who Josh Sokol is? And if I don't see any hands, that tells me everybody knows who he is, so I can ask one of you to explain it. That's how we work. I've been responsible for security at a whole variety of companies. Terry Smith here. Terry is my partner now. I'm a sales engineer who supports Terry. I was Terry's customer in 2001. Right, so we've been a team for a very long time, right? Right now, I'm a solutions architect supporting Terry. I'm also, anybody in here raise bees? Yeah. Well, look, it's what I do. This is who I work for. This is what we do. You can read the text. I'm here to tell you what we do. We are freaking badass at software supply chain security because for many years, we have been badass at malware analysis and threat hunting. That's who we are, that's what we do, all right? Build safe, buy safe, stay safe. Who are we hoping to talk to today? Did you see the cool zombies? Huh? So we're here. Hey, if you don't want to get stung by software supply chain attacks, hopefully you'll learn something today, right? If only that I've got the coolest chief marketing officer in the world who put together the B slide for me. So let's talk about this. So when you talk about components, how many people in here are developers? Okay. And how many of those developers write 100% of the code in the release? Oh, one. Okay, good. All right. So it's a small, yeah. It's 2 lines of JavaScript to do some Bitcoin mining. That one? Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So what do developers do? They don't want to reinvent the wheel. That's what it comes down to, right? So don't want to reinvent the wheel. They found one that's really good for how much on the internet? For free, right? And it just freaking works. You know, those of you that came in a little bit later, we were talking about the magic of AI, and we never once mentioned the fact that sometimes it's going to glitch and kick your ass in a way that only a machine can do, right? But the stuff that's up there on the internet, like Log4j, just works. Okay, there's a hand check coming. Who doesn't know who Chen is? Thank you. Okay, so Terry, you know. Yeah. So this guy, Chen Xiaozhen, Chinese guy in China, discovered the 0-day in log4j and knew there would be penalties if he told the rest of the world. And he did it anyway, right? So if you don't know Chen's name, now you do. That's that guy. How many people think that's the rule in the open source community? Is that people are going to put everything they got on the line to take care of everybody else? Ain't the way it works usually, but it worked for Chen. Here's a little pop quiz for you. What's worse than vulnerabilities? Another great slide from my CMO, right? Right? So everybody that I work with, they're like, hey, you know, we're all about the vulnerabilities. We've got SCA. We want to make sure that we don't pull in vulnerable component libraries. Okay. It's cool that this horse is completely unvulnerable, right? It's not that cool. It's not that cool, right? So this is why the bad guys look at that ecosystem and go, that feels a lot like attack surface. Did I lose anybody? Y'all still, if I lost you, tell me. I know I'm moving kind of fast. Okay, that's what it is, right? Because bad guys don't want to invent the wheel either, right? They don't invent it. They didn't have time. They ain't gonna write log4j, more about that in a minute, but they got time to weaponize it maybe, or maybe, hey, let's talk about UA-Parser, all right? What is that? So anybody heard of Feiselman? Okay, so this guy, very cool, put out this thing. How many people have branches of code or functions that vary depending on the user agent string? Yeah. So if you're writing in Node, there's a very good chance they're using this guy's stuff. He's got a little over 1,000 forks. Wow. 13 million downloads a week. That's a pretty good wheel, isn't it? That's a good wheel. Hey, wait a minute. Over 2,000 applications are dependent on this wheel? Hey, that feels like big attack surface to me. Oh, by the way, how many of y'all are paying for your open source? Don't raise your hand. It's a rhetorical question. But it's there, right? And we'll see why in a second. So what happened? Think about it like this. It's party time. We're all piñatas. That's what happened, right? So July 20th, hey, everything is okay. We got 20 issues, but hey, we're kind of winding up, right? And then here comes this guy, Super Oleg. And what's he got to say? Hey, this thing's been backdoored, I think. Totally hijacked. You shouldn't download it. What else has he got to say? So, hey, so can we use anything above 728, or is it all polluted? And then what's his other question? Say, hey, you gonna rewrite this thing from scratch? I saw the smile. Some of you are like, yeah, rewrite it from scratch. No, I don't think so. Remember this guy? So Super Oleg 39, I don't know who he is or where he's from, but he's another one of those guys, right? So where's Feiselman? This is a one-man show right now, right? Well, while we're waiting him, this is kind of fun. Hey, does that mean there's like malicious code in this? It is to ponder. Yes, there is, right? And we're still, so that's running through the thread, right? Where's Weissman? Don't know yet. Good thing though, antivirus is going to be here in 3 days. In 3 days, right? Okay, not a problem. And if you look, so it's running something called certutil. Is there anybody in this room that writes production code that invokes certutil on Windows to do file downloads? Okay, good. You shouldn't. It's very bad. We'll talk about behaviors in a second. This is one of them where you're like, if you're looking at your code and you see that, you got a problem, right? So 3 days and we all laugh, it's antivirus, but do you guys have a way to understand that your code's been backdoored or that one of your libraries has been backdoored before 3 days have elapsed and antivirus catches up? It's just a gut check. You know, just ask yourself, that's why you're here. This is America, so we feel like, you know, somebody ought to do something. But where's Fleiselman? I don't know. Anybody never seen this quote? Has everybody seen this quote? Yeah, so Mike Tyson, is there anybody who doesn't know who Mike Tyson is? Yeah, he's a professional boxer and he hits like a Mack truck. And so this is his quote: everybody's got a plan to beat me until they get punched in the face, right? And that's kind of the thing here, right? So, hey, our plan is what? So this is your library up on NPM. What do you think your plan is if it gets backdoored? We'll revert. Oh, but maybe we'll go forward. Or, hey, maybe we'll come up with a million freaking plans about what we could do while we're waiting on Faceland, right? Maybe we'll do that. Y'all still with me? You starting to see why this software supply chain stuff is kind of cool, kind of fun as an attack surface? Cool. All right, so the captain's coming back, right? So you got this guy in the comments going what? Hey, this steals passwords and cookies and what? And then you got somebody says what? Yeah. All right. Yeah. So here comes the captain and a little bit of Chris Farley. Right? So has anybody gone through that fire drill where you realize that you inadvertently released your secrets? Your AWS API master key, for example, is on the net? Yeah. Hey, was it a super fun time? Had to get a bunch of money back from the bank. That sounds suboptimal to me. Yeah. Just getting it from the bank is okay, as long as I didn't lose it beforehand. Yeah. So, okay. But if you haven't done that yet, there are large commercial software enterprises that have released key secrets. It's happening. So if you are scared to death of rotating all your secrets, first of all, that's normal. Second of all, start to think through it. Because if it happens and that's the first time you think about it, you're going to be looking at Chris Farley. All right? So again, where's Feiselman? Hey, he's back. And what's he got to say? Hey guys, I'm really sorry. I got spammed like nobody's business. So here's another pop quiz, right? So when we start to talk about threat actors, there are people that are malicious and capable, and then there are nation states that are malicious and capable. And sometimes based on what you're seeing, you can tell who you're attacked by, right? If you failed the quiz, the answer is false. So if you failed, right? So one of the things that's very interesting about this breach is that Faceman, when he comes back, he says, well, what the heck happened to my code? And he does a diff. Is there anybody in the room running a diff as a part of how you do AppSec? Sometimes, a little bit. We'll talk about how to make that meaningful in a second, but that, I think, nobody thinks of that, right? We ask about that, though, and we'll show you why in a second here. But remember that plan? Hey, can't seem to unpublish. How's that plan? Just got hit in the face, didn't you? And now your plan sucks. Okay. What can he do? He can deprecate. So when you're writing code or when you're securing your pipeline, have you got a little flag that says, hey, this package was deprecated, so that it doesn't come down before the developers who are very comfortable with that release pull down that release? Maybe, maybe not, right? It's probably something to think about. And then here comes Faceman, steals passwords. Right. Okay then. Here we go. And there it is. So 3 commits. How long do you think that took? It's very quick. Okay, let's rip that out. Let's do commits. And did he go backwards or forwards? He went forward, right? Wasn't the plan, but he stubbed his toe on the fact that he couldn't revert. So now, hey, we're going forward, and I got 3 commits. What do you think the quality of 3 commits that are done bam, bam, bam? What do you reckon the quality of that is? Pretty good? Yeah, probably pretty good. Yeah. It got rid of the malware, so that's cool. Because now, Faceman gets to relax, have a beer. You like that, huh? Yeah. That's my favorite slide in the whole deck. Yeah. and the bookend for that is obviously this, right? So, but yeah, so that's one thing that ended with one guy making 3 commits, bang, bang, bang. But it keeps happening, right? So if you look at this, that's this here. That's GitHub. What's the problem with GitHub? Problem is GitHub got only open source libraries, or does it have commercial libraries too? Trick question. The answer is it's got commercial libraries too. How do you know? The follow-up article to this identified the fact that there were multiple Microsoft commercial libraries that were compromised. Who's testing for that? Everybody I know is like, yeah, open source, man. I got all the tools I need. Yeah. What are you doing when the commercial library is compromised? Seems like a problem. All right. We doing okay? Yeah? Anybody need a break? And want to go see some AI stuff? Let's talk about this, right? Is there anybody who hadn't ever seen this diagram? You all seen this? Yeah. So what's it showing you? Hey, there's this great and mighty digital infrastructure called the internet. Hey, some guy, one guy. Remember how many times we're asking, where's Faceman? He's one guy. What about XZ? So XZ is actually a key underlying library for basically all security and all Linux distros on the internet. If you're a bad guy and you can kick this out from under the rest of the internet, if I can compromise that, what do I own? I own this. Especially if it's something that involves all of the security functions. All right? So what did that look like? So there's a maintainer. His name is LASCON. He started maintaining in 2009. Yeah. And started to complain about mental health issues about 2011. Well, sometime around 2021, some dude pops up on the XZUtils mailing list and says, hey, here's some code fixes, and they're tight. They're good. All right, and so over the course of 2 years, this guy earns the trust of that guy until he's got the ability to do what? Commit code. Right? I'm not just popping good ideas up on the mailing list anymore. Man, it's there. It's part of the code base. And then where does it go from the xzutils repo into the Linux distros, right? How far did it get? Anybody remember? All the way to beta. All the way to beta, right? And so, again, another gut check here. Are your software supply chain security controls better than all of the Linux distros? Because they let it into beta, right? Maybe, maybe not. All right. So what happened with XZ? One guy saves the internet again, right? Hey, my CPU's glowing red. I think there might be something dangerous in here, right? And that's it. So now there he is. One guy saves the internet again. Guys, you ought to upgrade or backgrade or do something, but do not go forward. So any questions about anything we've talked about so far? Okay, let's talk about what to do about it. All right. So let you read this for a second, because this guy is my personal hero. Who's never heard of SolarWinds? All right. And who didn't know that those guys are actually setting the pace because this guy is on point going, yeah, we ain't doing this twice. This is Tim Brown. Several federal agencies contacted him, right? And he stays the course, and they're making their software safer and better than ever, right? So what's lesson one? Hey, if you're not testing for software supply chain vulns, you're probably normal, but you might want to start doing that, all right? What else? Hey, malware detection, whoops. So malware, I do have customers that are like, yeah, we've got Clam AV. Hey man, it's better than nothing, all right? It's better than nothing, you've got it, okay. What about integrity checks? Who's testing for that? All right, so hey, I pulled down this library again. The signature's just a touch off. Is that a problem? It could be a problem. So how many people in here knew that there's a CVE from 2013 that by default all Windows machines will trust partially signed packages? Did you know that? Yeah. Yeah. And did you know Microsoft said, hey, we're not changing that? Here's how you harden Windows. Did you know that? Yeah, there's a way to do that. And then, here's the bonus points. For a book. Yeah, for a book. And you get to pick which one. So who was it that released something that was backdoored that relied on that vulnerability that Windows would trust a partially signed package? Come on now, there's a book on the line.
Microsoft. How many words in the book?
How many words in the book? Give me a break. So 3CX, right? What is 3CX? Well, 3CX is a voice over IP provider. Thankfully, nobody ever shares confidential information over the phone lines, right? So hey, a voice over IP provider that got backdoored, that had that nation state that wrote the backdoor rely on the fact that the majority of Windows machines were going to just accept it and trust it and it was going to be good. Yeah. So what was the first sign of that? The first sign of that was something nobody's testing for. The last release was covered by a full package signature and passed the integrity check. This Trojan release, signature's a little different. We're going to go ahead and vouch for a portion of the package, but we're going to back end it with a downloader. Y'all see that? That's the smart way to do business, isn't it? Right? Take advantage of the weaknesses in front of you and do it. But nobody's testing for that, right? That's not, whatever. It's not part of it. The other thing is checking for secrets leakage should be a part of your program. Why? If I leak my secrets to the internet, how long are they mine? Microseconds, right? They're on the internet, they're leaked. Good guys can find them, bad guys can find them, and what's going to happen? If the bad guys find them, opportunists, right? Follow you home, right? Hey, this is a great secret. Thank you. Now I own your entire AWS infrastructure. That's super cool. I was wanting one for my own, right? So check for that. And then, vulns are important. You want to check for vulns. You want to do it on as-built, though. Right? Is there anybody that has heard from their release manager that, hey, somebody monkeyed with the release? Anybody ever heard that? Yeah, one person nods. So I see that a lot more often than I'd like to. And what that comes down to is the release manager's got his package, he's got it buttoned up, he's ready. Somebody comes behind and goes, no, it needs that library, not this one. Let's go ahead and bundle it up. So you inject something into a signed package, who's checking for that? It's happening, are you checking? All right, any questions about lesson 1 here? Anybody want to argue with me? Is this the wrong lesson? Is there a lesson I missed? It's cool. I mean, I'm not AI, I'm flexible and stuff, all right? So, all right. Lesson 2, though, is a little bit, nobody's doing this. Make behaviors and make a behaviors baseline. I asked you all if there's anybody writing code that relies on cert util to do anything, and nobody held their hand up. And you knew I might have been calling on you. So if that behavior appears anywhere in a release, should that be a red flag? Yeah, you bet, right? Hey, and if suddenly software that you're consuming starts to activate the webcam and the microphone, would you know it? And is it right? And how do you know if it's right? I get this question from time to time, like, well, I trust my vendors. It's probably got to be okay. So, okay, well, in the release notes, can you point out where it showed that they're enabling some kind of interactivity via webcam and microphone in your text editing software, right? So behaviors are important, and then the network behaviors are important too. Do you know if your stuff's making call-outs to Syria or North Korea or China or whoever? Most people don't. But remember, Feiselman, so he used diff to his advantage. Is this diff here, or diff at RenovaBot? Anybody use that stuff? I've never used it. But it helped him, right? It helped him zero in, there is a problem with my library and I can tell you where. And now I can go ahead and put a bunch of beer in the fridge because I'll make some fast commits and then drink it, right? I do have customers that do this. I have customers that are instrumented looking for that behavior. They have distributed teams, and if anything comes into a merge that suddenly is checking for virtualization and their baseline never did, they break the build, all right? Same thing, I've got customers that check for things like the webcam, check like, is it checking for virtualization? Is it trying anti-obfuscation methods? And again, after establishing that baseline, because they don't want to get burned like, remember, SolarWinds, those guys are my heroes now. But they don't want to get burned by somebody who's copycatting SolarWinds, right? And same thing, hey, I'm bringing in a library and apparently it's going to do what? Pull down some more code from where? I don't know. A couple of time zones left. It'll be cool. But if you see any of those behaviors and the baseline didn't have them, Is it bad? It may or may not be bad. Is it a question that has to be answered? Do like this. Yes, it does. It has to be answered, right? All right, everybody still with me? All right. Okay, so the other thing that, I hear this a lot, is there anybody struggling with S-bombs right now? I heard a grunt, but I didn't see a hand. So I'm gonna commiserate with you.
Not struggling.
Okay.
I don't see the real utility coming from. Generates gigabytes and gigabytes of files, but no one's showing practical usage other than I have a file.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes. So did y'all hear that? So there are people that are generating S-bomb after S-bomb with no plan for what the hell to do with them. I'm paraphrasing. Is that close enough? Yeah. Yeah. And what makes it worse is a lot of the S-bombs that are wasting that space are inaccurate. Very cool. So what's the reason behind having an S-bomb? So there are some people in here that mentioned, I think, working on stuff in the last century. Don't let the brown hairs fool you. I'm one of those guys too. All right? And when SANS Institute released the top 20 controls, they were the first guys that are like, hey, these are the 20 controls that you need to have in place to secure your environment. Anybody want to guess what number 2 was? Inventory your software. Right? So what's the promise of the S-bomb? The promise of the S-bomb is the next time there's a log4j, I've already assessed everything that I'm writing or consuming, and now I know I don't have to ask any vendors, hey, is log4j in your stuff? I know it is or it isn't, period. That's the purpose of the S-bomb. Do that second step, which is inventory. Come on, man, bring it.
So the incidents that have happened this past year, some of the utility of the S-bomb didn't have zero effect. One of the big examples I saw, I forget the name of the specific exploit. I remember Cloudflare was one of the joint teams that reacted very quickly. It's because it was an exploit against the CDN itself that hosted this JavaScript library.
Can y'all hear him?
Yeah. So this JavaScript library was commonly deployed by marketing teams in low-code applications. Anyone know what's in your low-code applications or your websites or heck even your actual WordPress sites out there?
Bunch of code.
Bunch of code. Do you know what's in it? Do you know how?
What am I Captain Obvious?
Do you know how to get it? Do you know even how to get that inventory of what's in it? No. But I can tell you what business systems were impacted by that vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because I had my population of all my devices and who was impacted and what started talking to malicious systems 10 seconds after that vulnerability was released. S-bombs did me nothing.
Yeah.
So when it came down to it, I'm not SolarWinds though, so.
Well,
Here's the desktop stuff.
Yeah, I think, again, recognize that it was number 2 control of 20 controls,
Oh.
right? The goal is do that inventory. That's the goal. It may or may not help you.
I don't see a lot of tools in the developers' ecosystems that are now taking this information and doing protective actions.
That's correct.
And that's why I kind of nod my head.
So that assertion was basically, I don't see anything that takes this list of ingredients and tells you this one's poisonous and does something about it.
Something about it,
Yep.
helps inform.
Yep, that's exactly right.
My lawyers love it.
You know, I can't speak for your lawyers. You already saw my disclaimer. This is me. I don't want to meet your lawyers. But I think the thing to understand is that it's a list of ingredients, right? That's what it is. But when you think about log4j, for example, everybody's hair is on fire. Why? Because you got people releasing stuff with the vulnerable version of log4j in their code that don't know. You got people consuming stuff, paying good money, and wondering, is log4j in it, and what's the answer? Well, I'll get back to you. That was the answer. I'll get back to you. Yeah. What do you got, Kat?
Hey, do you think that gentleman over there should get one of those books?
Yeah, you want to get it to him or you want me to? Yeah. All right. Hey, tell you what, you get to pick a book. So thanks. Yeah. You might get 2. That was good. That was good. All right. The other thing about the SBOM is what? Is if you rely on the POM XML, maybe that's how it was released and maybe it's not. If you rely on some of the inclusion files, maybe that's what's in your release, maybe it's not. So if you don't have a way to do an actual inventory of as-built, your SBOM may be even more of a waste of time. So the other thing, while you're doing all this, so I did have a customer, remember that our stuff is good for both sides, if you're releasing or if you're consuming. I had a customer that took their enormous monolithic enterprise security package, ran it through our stuff, and found libraries in there that was signed by Sun Microsystems with expiration of 2003. Now, this is a guy who's paying about 10 figures of maintenance every year for this enormous, highly reputable security package. You think he's getting his money worth for paying that much money? No. So that's some other stuff. The other thing, is there anybody in here who's checking for blacklisted certs and what comes down? I saw an epiphany. Okay. So it's worth doing that too, right? And I think you get a book for your epiphany. So all right. So let's go ahead and do this real quick. So y'all know I can't sell you anything from the podium today, period, end of story. I was an OWASP founder. I know that probably better than anybody here, but I can share some stuff that's free. And we set up a community site. It's called secure.software. Secure.software. So they don't just do zombies. Our marketing people get some righteous domains, right? Secure.software. So by default, you'll drop into NPM. All right, let me make this bigger for you. By default, you'll drop into NPM, but if your interest is more along the lines of PyPy, Ruby Gems, NuGet, and soon to include Maven, hey, that's cool. But an easy way to understand what we're doing for you here, just type in cookie in NPM and you'll see there is a library called cookie. It's one of the top 1,000 up on NPM. That's cool. What's cooler is it's green. That's cool, all right? Now, on the other hand, if your developers are using something called a cookie, well, it's been removed. Why has it been removed? Anybody want to guess? It was backdoored since day one of its release. Backdoored. Why would you do that? Oh, because of the rest of the stuff I talked about for the last 40 minutes. Yeah. So you do that, right? But you can see what I run into a lot of times with security teams is like, yeah, this is good, but how do I test for this? So this is one way. The other thing that's interesting about this, right? So here's S-cookie. Hey, it's still up there. Unfortunately, it's got a severe vulnerability that is what? Exploited. Okay, so not theoretical. That's a problem. Let's go ahead and do the same thing. So who is more scared of PyPy than anything else? Yeah, I'm right there with you. So if you run the same thing on PyPy, thankfully, hey, you know what? We got to get a few rows down before we get an ugly failure. We've got a thing that's in the top 10K. Hey, that's really cool. But if we keep going, you'll see some other things that are kind of interesting. Hey, anybody care about licenses? If you're writing code and you release something where the license agreement in that library gives them the right to your code, seems like a problem, right? So maybe licenses matter or you get to meet his lawyer. Either way, right? This one's interesting too, though. There's a thing called PyCookie, and it's pending review. Well, why? Well, it was published 13 days ago. So the analysis looks kind of clean, or at least it's not dirty, but it hadn't been up there very long. As an AppSec person, this is where I would ask my developers, like, why? What did we expect to see in PyCookie that we can't see in one of these, very popular cookie libraries, right? It's neither good nor bad. I just want to know why. Yeah.
Look at cryptography.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Have you got a phone with you?
Yeah.
What's that website?
This one.
No, and what's it called?
Secure that.
Thank you. All right, I'm looking for cryptography. This is my favorite part when we go live. All right. Hey, you're onto something there. That's cool. Oops. Look at that. 5 supply chain artifact or attack artifacts in this thing. Yeah, you get a book, by the way.
It has 2 Y's on it.
Yeah.
Does this site have an API so that I can?
Yes. In a room full of developers, there had to be the question, does this site have an API? You get a book, but you don't get an API. I'm really sorry. All right.
But you did talk to his good ear, though.
That's right. That's right.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I think the biggest challenge is you get an SBOM. Let's assume that I am downloading cryptography 3, and after 2 years. So the problem is like there is transient dependencies in this, right? Like where this library will depend on other libraries, and that library has a vulnerability. Then that's when developers are getting panicked and they're getting lost in the water. So that is the challenge I would think. When I did research like 4 or 5 years back, I was trying to get exploit details and everything, try to automate the entire process, which I don't want to specify the company's name. I worked with architect, I gave my code to, but then at that point of time I decided that this is an ocean. You need to have a full-time developer, not one developer, multiple developers where they have to get it. But the biggest challenge was, how do I tackle transient dependencies where this library will depend on the other library? The vulnerability doesn't exist on the actual library, but the transient level is like 3 level or 4th level. That the developer might be alive, not alive, moved on.
All right, so the question is, how do you deal with transitive dependencies? The implied question is, how do you deal with runtime transitive dependencies, right? My answer is, if it's a embedded dependency, you check for it all the way to the right, check against the release. If it's a transitive, remember you're capturing network too, right? It's not gonna go ahead and do any kind of updates or pull in any other libraries or make any, God help us, cloud calls without that being in the code. So that's the second thing. That work?
If there is a vulnerability, then what do you do?
If that's a vulnerability, what do you do? I don't know. What do you do with vulnerabilities?
You can't fix it, and if there is no other library, there's one interesting phrase, if it is working, leave it, don't touch it.
Remember how I said there was one control about software inventory? This is where you look at the 19 other controls. Is everybody good with this? Are you holding that 5 minutes on because I'm running out of time? I've got 1 minute? Okay. All right.
I'll tell you in 5 minutes.
Okay, good deal.
His book away.
Yeah, no book for you. All right, guys, so secure.software, go. Monkey with it. I really appreciate your example. That was cool. So I'll keep that. All right, let's wrap it up.
Eddie, you have a question?
Yeah.
So we've talked about getting an inventory of your packages and dependencies, and we've talked about once you have that inventory, where to kind of cross-check to make sure, is this valid still, is this vulnerable?
And we asked about an API to do that at speed, which is where I would sell you something, but go ahead.
Right, so my question is, so from an incident response perspective, let's say I get an alert for a host, and it's performing some commands in association with a script. If you don't have an inventory for that specific script or host immediately available, what would you recommend being like the quickest way to identify what it's running?
Ask me a different way.
So if it's running a command as an incident responder, I'd want to know, is this normal for it or not? So
Right.
identifying the packages associated with it would be helpful. Would you recommend reaching out directly to the developer, or is there a more command line or programmatic way that you might discover what packages are on a host if you don't have like an easy access inventory for it?
I refer you to the API question. I think, so let me make sure I understand. So your question is, hey, I'm an incident responder. Something popped in over here on Bob's machine. It's making calls out to someplace unsavory, or maybe not unsavory, but they're unexpected calls, right? And so your question is, how do I get to the bottom of that rabbit hole?
If you don't have an easy inventory to grab.
If you don't have an easy inventory. Okay, well, I think that this is where I want to talk to you about the malware analysis side of what we do. You would call the big RL. That's what I would recommend. What our customers do in those cases is they actually look, step through, understand what it is and why it's doing that, and then look, if you've got that call out, then depending on your network controls, you can sample that traffic, get a better understanding that way, or just stop it, right?
Your recommendation would be to perform a static analysis on the script file itself.
That's one way to do it. I think if it's a script, usually that code is not obfuscated. That's right in front of your face. All right, so number one. The other thing though, the first step of incident response is what? Prepare. Second step is what? Detect. Third step is what? Say contain. Yes. Right? And so after it's contained is when you care about what it was and why. That's my opinion. Does that make sense? Good. If it doesn't make sense, you're gonna find me after because he's getting ready to flag me for time. So, now 3, okay. All right, guys, look, here's my closing thought. And y'all, I appreciate this. This has been really fun. I want you to think about Log4j. I want you to think about what some little guy came up and talked to me about the last time I gave this talk. And he said, Log4j was a missed opportunity. So what are you talking about? He says, the smart money for Log4j would have been to find any library that's widely used, identify the 0 day, write the fix, and be Johnny on the spot when somebody else stubs their toe on that 0 day, and hey, you've got the fix. Happens to have 2 lines of your backdoor, but it solves that 0 day, right? So when you think about the internet like a bad guy and this ecosystem like a bad guy, that's the opportunity in front of them. Somebody's thinking that way, I promise you, right here, right now, right? Because you can pwn the world, all right? Anybody got any questions? How many minutes have we got? Yes, sir.
One more.
All right.
What's your opinion on private package repositories?
The question was, what's my opinion on private package repos? I love them, right? I love them. So a lot of development, it's, hey, I'm writing my first party code. I want to pull some library from out there somewhere, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and release. If you've got the ability to say, look, this is the library you want, and I can stage that and put it under the microscope, and then I have my developers actually pull from that trusted repo, that feels like a private repo that's very good for everybody involved. Is that what you're asking me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good deal. And there's government guidance that says that's a good idea. The enduring ESF, right? The Enduring Security Framework? Okay. Yep. All right, great question. Any other questions? Okay, who is it that I owe a book to? All right, yeah. Well, thanks everybody. Hey, do me a favor. Give a hand here to Patrick and Aaron. All right. Thank you. All right.